The world felt like it was unraveling, thread by thread, as Elliot slumped onto the couch in Jamie's cramped apartment. His heart was a storm, battered by the fight with his parents that morning, their words still clawing at him. "You're throwing your life away on this art nonsense." He buried his face in his hands, trying to silence the echo of their disappointment, when the door creaked open. Jamie, his best friend since high school, tossed his keys onto the counter with a grin. "You look like you need a nap, man." "My place is your place." Crash on the couch. Elliot managed a weak nod, grateful for the escape. Jamie's apartment in downtown Phoenix was a chaotic haven of mismatched furniture, art supplies, and the faint smell of takeout. It was the kind of place where you could hide from the world, and Elliot needed that now more than ever. He kicked off his sneakers, curling up on the worn cushions, the weight of the day pulling him towards sleep. The last thing he saw was Jamie disappearing into his bedroom, muttering about a work call. Silence settled, broken only by the hum of the city outside. Elliot's eyes fluttered shut, and he let himself drift, hoping sleep would erase the ache in his chest. He didn't hear the front door open again, didn't hear the soft tread of boots on the hardwood. But he felt the couch dip beside him, a sudden warmth that startled him awake. His eyes snapped open, and there, lying inches away, was a stranger. Well, not entirely a stranger, Jamie's older brother, Caleb, who Elliot had only met in passing years ago. Caleb, with his broad shoulders and easy grin, was back from his last tour in the military, his presence filling the room like a quiet storm. "Hope I didn't scare you," Caleb said, his voice low, almost teasing, but there was a gentleness in his hazel eyes that made Elliot's breath catch. "Jamie said you were crashing here. Didn't expect you to steal my nap spot." Elliot's heart thudded, his face flushing as he scrambled to sit up. Sorry, I didn't know you were back in town." He tried to laugh it off, but Caleb's gaze held him, steady and searching, like he could see right through the walls Elliot had built. "Nah, you're good," Caleb said, stretching out, his arm brushing against Elliot's. "Mind if I join you?" "Long day." He didn't wait for an answer, just settled in, his body relaxed but closed too close. Elliot's pulse raced, a mix of nerves and something he couldn't name, something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. They lay there, the silence thick with unspoken words. Elliot stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Caleb's breathing, the faint scent of cedar and leather clinging to him. He'd always known he was different, had felt the pull toward men in a way he'd never dared voice. Not in his conservative hometown, not with parents who'd call it a sin. But here, with Caleb so near, that truth roared to life, undeniable and terrifying. "You okay?" Caleb's voice broke the quiet, softer now, like he sensed the storm inside Elliot. He turned his head, their faces inches apart, and Elliot's world tilted. Those eyes held a warmth that made him want to confess everything, to unravel the mess of his heart right there on that couch. "I'm fine," Elliot lied, his voice barely a whisper. But he wasn't fine. Not when Caleb's presence was rewriting every rule he'd ever known about himself. The afternoon light spilled through the window, painting them in gold, and Elliot felt a spark of something new, something dangerous. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, that nap, was the beginning of everything. Over the next few days, Elliot found himself at Jamie's place more often, using the excuse of helping with a mural project for Jamie's community center. But really, it was Caleb. Caleb, who'd linger after dinner, sharing stories of his time overseas, his voice steady but his eyes haunted. Caleb, who'd laugh at Elliot's sarcastic quips, their banter growing easier, sharper, charged with something neither acknowledged. One evening, as they sat on the fire escape, the city sprawling below, Caleb handed Elliot a beer. "You're not like most people around here," he said, his tone curious, not judgmental. "You've got this fire in you, like you're fighting something bigger than yourself." Elliot's grip tightened on the bottle. "Maybe I am," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He wanted to say more, to tell Caleb about the sketches he hid, the ones of men intertwined, drawn in secret, about the fear that kept him silent. But he didn't. Not yet. Caleb leaned closer, his shoulder brushing Elliot's. "Whatever it is, you don't have to fight it alone." The words were simple, but they hit like a tidal wave, cracking something open in Elliot's chest. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay on Jamie's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying Caleb's words, his touch, the way his smile seemed to promise something Elliot wasn't sure he could handle. He was falling, and he didn't know how to stop. By the end of the week, the tension was unbearable. They were alone in the apartment, Jamie out with friends, when Caleb suggested a movie. They sat close, too close, the screen flickering with some action flick neither cared about. Halfway through, Caleb's hand brushed Elliot's, and neither pulled away. The air crackled, electric, as their fingers intertwined, tentative at first, then firm. "Elliot," Caleb said, his voice rough, like he was fighting his own battle. "I don't know what this is, but I feel it." "Do you?" Elliot's heart stopped. He wanted to run, to hide, to scream yes. Instead, he nodded, his throat too tight for words. Caleb's hand tightened around his, and in that moment, Elliot knew there was no going back. The world outside Jamie's apartment faded, leaving only the pulse of Elliot's heartbeat and the warmth of Caleb's hand in his. They sat frozen, the movie forgotten, as the weight of that touch anchored them to something neither could name. Elliot's mind screamed at him to pull back, to rebuild the walls he'd spent years fortifying, but his heart wanted to leap. Caleb broke the silence first, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I've never done this before." "Not with a guy?" His thumb traced a slow circle over Elliot's knuckles, and the vulnerability in his eyes made Elliot's chest ache. "But with you, it feels right." Elliot swallowed hard, the confession tearing at his defenses. "I've never told anyone," he admitted, his voice shaking. "Not Jamie, not my parents. I've always known, but saying it out loud." He trailed off, the fear of his family's rejection clawing at him. Caleb's gaze didn't waver, steady and warm, like a lighthouse in a storm. "Then don't say it," Caleb murmured. "Just be here with me." He leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching, and Elliot's world narrowed to the space between them. The kiss that followed was tentative, a brush of lips that held years of unspoken longing. It was soft, then desperate, as if they were both drowning and this was their air. They pulled back, breathless, and Elliot laughed a shaky, disbelieving sound. "This is insane," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You're Jamie's brother. You." Caleb grinned, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. "Yeah, and you're Elliot. The guy who's been driving me crazy since I saw you on that couch." He paused, his expression serious. "But we need to be careful. Jamie doesn't know about me either." The weight of that truth settled over them. Jamie, their bridge, their confidant, was also a wild card. He was open-minded, sure, but this was personal, messy, complicated. Elliot nodded, his mind racing with the risks, the secrets, the thrill of what they'd just started. Over the next few weeks, their relationship bloomed in stolen moments. Late-night talks on the fire escape, hands brushing under the table during dinner with Jamie. Quiet mornings when Caleb would sneak over before Jamie woke up. Each moment was a spark, igniting something fierce and fragile in Elliot's heart. He'd never felt so alive, so seen, but the fear lingered, a shadow that grew with every touch. One night, at a local art gallery where Elliot's work was displayed, the tension boiled over. Caleb had come to support him, standing proudly by a vibrant painting of a phoenix rising from a Shisa piece Elliot had poured his heart into, inspired by Caleb's stories of resilience. The crowd buzzed with praise, but Elliot only saw Caleb, his smile brighter than the gallery lights. As they left, walking through the cool desert night, Caleb pulled Elliot into an alley, his hands framing Elliot's face. "You're incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That painting, it's you. It's us." The kiss that followed was fierce, unguarded, but it was cut short by a familiar voice. "Elliot." Jamie stood at the mouth of the alley, his expression a mix of shock and confusion. The air turned to ice. Caleb stepped back, his face pale, and Elliot's heart plummeted. "What the hell is going on?" Jamie demanded, his eyes darting between them. Elliot opened his mouth, but no words came. Caleb, always the steady one, spoke first. "Jamie, we need to talk." His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. They moved to a nearby diner, the neon sign casting a harsh glow over their booth. Jamie listened, his face unreadable, as Caleb explained his feelings, his fears, the truth he'd buried through years of service and expectations. "I didn't know how to tell you," Caleb finished, his voice raw. "I didn't want to lose you." Jamie's silence was deafening. Finally, he looked at Elliot. "And you? You're part of this too." Elliot nodded, his throat tight, bracing for rejection. But Jamie's expression softened, just a fraction. "I need time," he said, standing. "This is a lot." He left them there, the bell above the door jangling in his wake. Elliot felt like he was falling apart, but Caleb's hand found his under the table. "He'll come around," Caleb said, though his voice wavered. "He has to." But the world wasn't done testing them. The next day, Elliot's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "We need to talk about your future. Come home tonight." The words felt like a summons to judgment, and Elliot knew what was coming: a confrontation about his art, his choices, his life. He didn't know how to tell her about Caleb, about the love that was reshaping him. That evening, at his parents' house in the suburbs, the air was thick with tension. His father's voice was sharp, his mother's eyes cold. "You're wasting your life," his father said, slamming a fist on the table. "This art nonsense. These friends you keep. It's not who we raised you to be." Elliot's heart pounded, Caleb's face flashing in his mind. He wanted to scream the truth, to tell them he was in love, that he was finally himself. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he stormed out, the door slamming behind him, and drove straight to Caleb's. Caleb's apartment was a small, tidy space a few blocks from Jamie's, filled with military mementos and a single potted plant that looked like it was fighting for its life. When Elliot arrived, his eyes red from holding back tears, Caleb didn't ask questions. He just pulled him inside, wrapping him in a hug that felt like safety. "You don't have to talk," Caleb said, his voice steady. "Just stay." They sat on the floor, backs against the couch, sharing a bottle of whiskey Caleb had saved from his last deployment. Elliot poured out the fight with his parents, the years of feeling like he didn't belong, the fear that loving Caleb would cost him everything. Caleb listened, his hand resting on Elliot's knee, grounding him. I told myself I'd never let anyone in, Caleb said when Elliot fell silent. After the things I saw overseas, I thought keeping people at a distance was easier. Safer. But then you showed up, and I couldn't stay away. He smiled. Bittersweet. You're worth the risk, Elliot. The words lit something fierce in Elliot's chest. He kissed Caleb, hard and desperate, pouring every ounce of fear and hope into it. They made love that night, clumsy and raw, their bodies learning each other in the dim light of Caleb's bedroom. It was more than physical, it was a promise, a defiance against the world that wanted to tear them apart. But the world wasn't done. The next morning, Jamie texted, "Meet me at the community center. We need to talk." Elliot's stomach twisted, but Caleb squeezed his hand. "We'll face him together," he said, and Elliot clung to that strength. At the community center, Jamie was waiting by the mural Elliot had painted, a vibrant explosion of color, a phoenix soaring over a desert landscape. His expression was guarded, but not angry. "I've been thinking," Jamie said, his voice steady. "I don't get it. Not completely. But you're my brother, Caleb. And you're my best friend, Elliot. If this is who you are, I'm not going to walk away." Relief flooded Elliot, but it was tempered by Jamie's next words. "Just be careful. This town, our family is not ready for this. You know that, right?" The warning hung heavy, a reminder of the tightrope they walked. Life settled into a fragile rhythm. Elliot and Caleb stole moments together, their love growing in the quiet spaces, cooking dinner, sketching while Caleb read, stealing kisses in the car. But the outside world pressed in. Whispers followed them at the local bar, where Caleb's old military buddies shot curious glances. Elliot's parents called relentlessly, demanding he fix his life. And then there was the gallery owner, who loved Elliot's work but hinted that controversial, personal lives could hurt sales. One night, as they lay in bed, Caleb's fingers tracing patterns on Elliot's back, he said, "I want to tell people. Not hide anymore. But I'm scared it'll break you." His voice cracked, and Elliot realized Caleb was carrying his own fears about his military past, his family, the life he'd tried to rebuild. "I'm scared too," Elliot admitted. "But hiding feels like dying. I want to be us, out there, no matter what it costs." They made a pact that night to come out, to face the world together, starting with a community art event where Elliot's next piece would be unveiled. The event was a week away, and Elliot threw himself into his work, painting a piece that screamed there true the canvas of two figures, hands clasped, standing against a storm of color and shadow. It was bold, raw, a declaration of love and defiance. Caleb watched him paint, his pride palpable, but the tension grew as the day approached. The night before the event, disaster struck. Elliot's parents showed up at Jamie's apartment, unannounced, their faces thunderous. "We heard about you and him," his mother spat, her voice dripping with disgust. "You're embarrassing us, Elliot. This stops now." Elliot stood frozen, his heart hammering, as his father stepped forward. "You're coming home. We'll fix this." The room spun, and Elliot felt like he was 16 again, hiding his sketches, his truth, his self. But then Caleb was there, stepping between them, his voice calm but unyielding. "He's not going anywhere," Caleb said. "Elliot's his own man. And I love him." The words hung in the air, a bombshell that silenced the room. Elliot's parents stared, stunned, then turned and left without another word. Elliot collapsed onto the couch, shaking, as Caleb held him. "I'm sorry," Elliot whispered. "I didn't want you to have to do that." Caleb kissed his forehead. "I'd do it again. For you." But the weight of that confrontation lingered, a crack in their fragile world. The morning of the art event dawned bright, the Arizona sun blazing over the community center. Elliot's painting stood covered, a secret waiting to be unveiled, while his nerves churned like a storm. Caleb was by his side, steady as ever, but the weight of his parents' rejection and Jamie's warning hung over them. The crowd gathered locals, artists, Caleb's military friends, even a few curious reporters. Elliot felt exposed, like his heart was on display before the canvas even was. As the event began, Jamie took the stage, his voice warm as he introduced Elliot's work. "My friend's art speaks truth," he said, glancing at Elliot with a small, supportive nod. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully, but it was a start. Elliot's chest loosened, just enough to breathe. When the cover fell from the painting, the room went quiet. Two figures, bold and unapologetic, stood hand in hand against a tempest of colors and blues clashing, a world in chaos. Yet their grip was unbreakable. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some admiring, others uneasy. Elliot's pulse raced, but Caleb's hand found his, squeezing tight. A reporter approached, her smile sharp. "This piece is provocative. Care to share the inspiration?" Elliot froze, the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He'd planned to deflect, to keep their truth private, but Caleb's steady presence anchored him. "It's about love," Elliot said, his voice trembling but clear. "About fighting for who you are, no matter what the world throws at you." He glanced at Caleb, whose eyes shone with pride. The reporter pressed for more, but Elliot stepped back, letting the painting speak for itself. The night was a blur of praise and criticism. Some clapped Elliot on the back, calling the piece revolutionary. Others whispered, their disapproval sharp as knives. Caleb's military buddies were mixed. Some slapped his shoulder. Others kept their distance, their silence louder than words. By the end, Elliot was exhausted, but the fire in his chest burned brighter. He'd done it. They'd done it. But the fallout came swiftly. The next morning, a local blog posted about the event, outing Elliot and Caleb with a mix of praise and veiled judgment. The comments section exploded, supportive voices drowned out by hate, accusations, threats. Elliot's phone buzzed with messages from his parents. "You've shamed us. Don't come back." Caleb's old commander called, his tone cold, suggesting he keep his personal life quiet if he wanted work. Caleb took it in stride, his jaw tight, but his resolve unshaken. "They don't get to define us," he told Elliot, pulling him close. But Elliot felt the cracks widening: his family, his career, the town he'd called home, all slipping away. He wondered if love was worth this cost, even as Caleb's arms made him believe it was. They decided to fight back, not with fists, but with truth. Elliot started a series of paintings, each more daring, telling stories of queer love and resilience. Caleb joined him, sharing their journey on social media, his military background lending weight to their message. Slowly, support grew: letters from young people who saw themselves in Elliot's art, messages from veterans who admired Caleb's courage. But the pressure didn't ease. One night, as they walked home from a diner, a group of men followed them, their taunts cutting through the dark. "Faggots," one spat, and Elliot's blood ran cold. Caleb stepped in front, his body tense, ready to fight. The men backed off, but the encounter left Elliot shaken, the reality of their vulnerability sinking in. At home, they held each other, the world outside feeling like a battlefield. "We can leave," Caleb said, his voice soft but fierce. "Start over somewhere new. San Francisco, New York, somewhere we can be us." Elliot wanted to say yes, to run from the hate, but something in him resisted. "This is our home," he said. "If we leave, they win." Caleb nodded, his eyes fierce with love, and they made a new pact to stay, to fight, to build a life together, no matter the cost. The next week, Jamie invited them to a community meeting at the center, a chance to address the backlash. Elliot hesitated, but Caleb's hand in his was a reminder of their strength. They walked in together, heads high, ready to face whatever came. The community center was packed, the air thick with tension and curiosity. Elliot and Caleb stood at the front, hands clasped, as Jamie introduced them. "These are my family," Jamie said, his voice steady, a quiet defiance in his words. "They're here to share their story. Listen." The room fell silent, and Elliot felt the weight of every gaze, some warm, some hostile. He spoke first, his voice shaking but growing stronger. "I've spent my life hiding who I am, afraid of losing everything. But real love is worth fighting for." He gestured to Caleb, his anchor. "We're not asking for approval. We're asking for a chance to live, to love, to be." Caleb took over, his military training keeping his voice calm but powerful. "I serve this country to protect freedom. That includes the freedom to love who I love. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's your battle, not ours." A few people clapped. Others shifted uneasily, but the room was listening. Questions came, some kind, some sharp. A woman asked about their families. A man challenged their lifestyle. Elliot answered with honesty, Caleb with resolve, and slowly, the room softened. A young girl, no older than 16, stood up, her voice trembling. "Thank you," she said. "You're making it easier for people like me." Elliot's eyes burned with tears, and Caleb squeezed his hand. The meeting didn't change the world, but it planted a seed. Over the next months, Elliot's art gained traction. His paintings shone in galleries across the state. Caleb started a support group for queer veterans, his leadership drawing people together. Jamie became their fiercest ally, hosting events at the community center to bridge divides. But the real victory was quieter. One evening, as they sat on the fire escape, the city lights twinkling below, Elliot realized he wasn't afraid anymore. Not of his parents, not of the world. He looked at Caleb, whose smile was a promise of forever, and knew they'd built something unbreakable. "I love you," Elliot said, the words no longer a secret but a truth he'd shout to the world. "I love you too," Caleb replied, pulling him close. "Always will." They stayed there, wrapped in each other, as the stars blinked above. The road hadn't been easy, families lost, battles fought, but they'd found a home in each other. And in that moment, on that fire escape, Elliot knew that nap on Jamie's couch had changed his life forever, not because it was the start, but because it led to this, a love that defied the odds, a life that was theirs. Years later, they'd tell their story to anyone who'd listen, not just the pain, but the joy, the fight, the triumph. They'd stand together at pride parades, their hands clasped, Elliot's paintings a backdrop to their love. And every time someone asked how it began, Elliot would smile and say, "It started with a nap. And then his brother laid down beside me." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, messy, beautiful, and worth every moment.